the shooting range. In this episode, Pages of History, Chinese 4th generation fighter jet, Squadmates, conquering the new map, and Metal Beasts, the famous American Howitzer. It's time to meet the vehicle that defined the name of the second autumn update of War Thunder. Please welcome the legendary American self-propelled howitzer, the M109, a veritable king of battle. Today's highlight is the A1 version from the US tech tree, but much of the things we're going to mention also apply to modifications from the other 4 nations that got their own M109s. Let's take a look at this newcomer. Its main caliber is a 155mm gun with elevation angles between -3 and +75 degrees. There's a large caliber machine gun mounted on the roof. The engine and transmission compartment is in the front, the driver sits right next to it, and 5 more crew members are in the turret. The ammo and charges are found around the combat compartment. Self-propelled howitzers have been a frequent sight in Metal Beasts lately, and for good reason. They've got great guns and powerful large-caliber rounds that can send any target back to the hangar with a single strike. The M109 is no exception. The 155mm caliber has long been familiar to War Thunder players, just like the full suite of shells available. The main one is the M107, a shell packing more than 9 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent. A direct hit to the turret from this baby spells doom to any enemy the SPG might face. We also suggest taking a few shells with proximity fuses. You can use those to ward off pesky aircraft or flush out targets in cover. The gun is where you'll find the main differences between SPG variants. The A1 model can boast a longer barrel with 29 calibers against 23 on Model G and the base version. It's hard to say if there's a superior one here. The American and British M109s have an easier time shooting at medium and long ranges, while the shorter-barreled ones offer a higher arc, which is better for lobbing shells over close-range obstacles. In the field, each machine's efficiency depends on the player's skills and style. Where the A1 version really stands out is its rate of fire. In a vehicle with no reliable armor, each second spent on reloading is crucial. In all other regards, the M109 is a typical HE slinger. Its lack of unique traits and somewhat unimpressive stats might make for a challenge of sorts, but in the hands of a skilled player, it promises a bounty of spectacular destruction. After the end of the Vietnam War and before the early 80s, fighter aviation was experiencing a great deal of change. Combat roles were overhauled, aerodynamics were rethought. American, Soviet, and European aircraft designers were racing each other, rolling out radically new machines that were leaps and bounds ahead of their predecessors. They were supersonic, multi-role, capable of detecting and striking an aerial or a ground target tens of kilometers away, and yet still agile and easy to control. These machines, the Mirage 2000, the F-16, and the MiG-29, would later be dubbed 4th generation fighters. But what about China? It might seem that they were absent from the list of leading aviation nations. During the battle for the Paracel Islands in 1974, the Chinese Air Force played a very limited role, and in the Sino-Vietnamese War of '79 it was virtually inactive. It wasn't until the mid-80s that fragments of information began to surface about a new Chinese interceptor with a delta wing, based on either the Soviet MiG-21 or the Su-15. But could that really be considered a modern machine? By the late 80s, even North Korea had received MiG-29s from the USSR and had started partial production. Then came the 90s, and the global scene shifted. China and Russia renewed their aviation partnership. And that's when the full picture emerged. It was like a bolt from the blue. As it turned out, China had long had its own fully fledged 4th generation fighter bomber, already produced in impressive numbers and in service since the second half of the 80s. It was the JH-7, the Flying Leopard, resembling, yet at the same time completely unlike, any machines employed by other countries. Its development had begun around the end of the Vietnam War. Its creation was a long and arduous journey, additionally complicated by conflicting requirements from the Air Force and the Navy. Experts' guesses and assumptions came together like pieces of a puzzle. Here was the nose section, clearly influenced by the Soviet MiG-23 acquired from Egypt. The avionics bore a striking resemblance to those of the American Phantoms and F-111s that had been downed in Vietnam. They were meticulously collected, thoroughly studied, retrofitted, and recreated in line with the capacities of domestic industry. Engines? Those came from everywhere. Chinese engineers just went and borrowed ideas from Americans, British, and Soviets alike, acquiring and studying samples from wherever they could. The aerodynamics, however, were worked out entirely by domestic effort. It became clear that this time it wasn't a regular copy of foreign technologies. It was a wholly independent, successful design. With the Leopard, China didn't merely enter the global elite club of cutting-edge fighter developers. They kicked the door in and took their rightful place. Yeah, they were a bit late to the party, by about a decade, but for some reason there were no takers for sarcasm on this account. Instead, many began to ponder. So, if the Chinese managed to build a fourth-generation fighter bomber, virtually from scratch, in a relatively short time, and managed to keep the existence of the JH-7 program hidden from the world for nearly 10 years, then what might they create tomorrow? And moreover, what else do they already have that we still don't know about? Our squad mates have grown used to sharing their combat experiences on those tank maps that have been in the game for a while. But what if we sent them to a less familiar location? Some winning tactics on the brand new Flanders certainly wouldn't hurt. This time our squad will be part of the northern team. Since the location is almost symmetrical, you can simply mirror the moves should you find yourself on the southern team. In the first scenario, both tankers spawn on the western spawn point and mount an attack on the left side of the map. One moves along the outermost hills of the front line, while the other one takes the eastern part of the second line. This allows the team to flank Point A from opposite sides and deal with the first wave of enemies with relative ease. Immediately after, one of them heads to the capture area. On the Cold War era version of the map, there's a crashed transport jet right on the point. Climbing on it can help you ambush a few tanks from the second wave. At earlier combat ratings, there's a downed airship instead, offering some debris as decent cover. The next objective is the central point, B. The squad mates move eastward on both sides of the railway. The southern players should be particularly cautious and use trenches and fortifications to conceal their movements on the enemy side of the map. If they're spotted anyway, their friend from the northern side can quickly come to the rescue. Once in the center, the squad mates approach the point from both sides. In an area with plenty of cover, rushing is a bad idea. Both players carefully check each nook and corner, either taking out the enemy on the spot or reporting the location to allies. Once the point is clear, the northern player starts the capture, while the southern one heads back to the enemy side of the map to intercept new waves of attack. That could have been the end of it, but our squad decided not to rest on their laurels. Pushing further east, they emerge at the racetrack on the east side of the map. This area offers significantly less cover than the center, so it might be even easier to take. If necessary, the same attack can be mirrored to the west. This would keep the enemy under constant pressure, forcing them to return to each of the points repeatedly. Scenario number 2 starts with spawning at different points. This time, the initial target is the central area. The squad mates circle the town from different sides and put it in a pincer. Scanning streets from opposite sides one by one, they systematically eliminate the enemies from their positions. After capturing the central point, the squad crosses the railway and advances west through the trenches. They try to pick different paths to avoid being ambushed together. By maintaining an optimal distance, they cover a larger area and retain the ability to support each other. Sooner or later, the maze of trenches will lead them to the flank of Point A. Ideally, the advance should be performed in coordination with allies delivering an attack to the flank to draw the enemy's attention. But random battles are random battles, and things rarely go according to plan. Our squad mates often have to rely on each other alone. In this case, when approaching the point from one side, teammates need to stay close to each other and exchange intel all the time to ensure neither of them has to face a group of enemies alone. Once the point bears the proud Allied colors, the squad mates can spread out and take positions that make it convenient to control approaches to the front line. Squares E2 and E4, for instance, offer an excellent view of the enemy side of the map. Share your discoveries on Flanders and suggest new maps for future episodes. Meanwhile, it's time for us to answer your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Panzer EXE. What's the difference between the AJ-37 and the AJS-37? Hi, Panzer. We hope you're not a virus. The AJS has a stronger engine and can carry more air-to-surface and air-to-air missiles, including all-aspect ones. Ishikat asks, is there a way to change the speed of your WASD camera movement in replay mode? Hey, Ishikat. Yeah, you can do that. Just go to Controls, Spectator Camera, and edit the axes by changing the multiplier parameter. We'd like to add that this menu is very useful for those who work with replays, like recording videos. Another question comes from Cool7Boy. What's the hardest metal you can get in the German tech tree? Hi there, Cool Boy. It's hard to say which metal is the hardest to get. It all depends on the player, their style, preferred play modes, and of course, their desire. If you set yourself a goal of earning a certain reward, any of them is possible. You can check what challenges you need to complete for each of the medals in your profile by going to the Medals tab. Sassine writes, what's the best way to angle the M26 and T26 variants? Hello, Sassine. The best angle for the M26 is between 30 and 40 degrees. Angling this way can make its upper and lower front plates significantly more durable without exposing the sides too much. By the way, it's a good chance to remind you about protection analysis. It's a super useful tool for experimenting right in the hangar. And the last comment for today was written by Hilarious. Tried War Thunder Mobile this weekend. Gotta say, it's actually a fun time. Hi there! We're happy you can now enjoy War Thunder even when you're away from your PC or console. Thank you for your feedback. Your comments help us make all the versions of the game better. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to switch to first-person view if you're flying through that tunnel. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.